There is a massive shift going on inside the union, specifically the Teamsters. Following the RNC and Biden's campaign exit, they commissioned a national electronic poll of 1.3 million members. Trump nearly at 60%, 59.6%. Harris in the 30s at 34%. And in the past week, following the DNC convention and recent presidential debate, which people thought that was great for Harris, the Teamsters commissioned another independent poll done by Lake Research Partners, the final national survey. That poll ended on September 15th, a few days ago. What did it show? Trump still at 58%. That was after the debate, after Harris has had time on the campaign trail, after a debate that people thought Harris, did so great. And what does it show? People can read through the theatrics of these debates, and the Teamsters and those workers who make up the Teamsters see right through it. And Harris lost support down to 31%. So what did the Teamsters union do? Here's the bizarre part in their announcement, which I think, listen, this is a huge win for President Trump, the fact that the Teamsters have put out this information, that the true middle-class Americans in the private sector are supporting President Trump by 60%. I mean, that is gigantic. But why don't the Teamsters endorse? Seems like a pretty big number there when you're at 60-30. It's not just like 50-50 or 52. It's not inside any margin of error. And Harris's numbers continue to go down amongst the Teamsters. Listen to this sentence. Glad we have attorneys here and people that read like attorneys on our team. The union's extensive member polling, this is why they did not endorse, showed no majority support for Vice President Harris and no universal support for President Trump. So Harris would have just had to get majority support to get their endorsement. Trump would have had to get 100% of support to get the Teamsters endorsement. So they're still extremely afraid of what Democrats might do to working men and women in the middle class if Harris does win, because they've created a double standard to get their endorsement. I first want to go to Robert out in California because he answered our first call, which was to hear from potentially members of the Teamsters and if they were talking to fellow Teamsters and who are they in the majority, likely voting for, Trump or Harris. So Robert, welcome to the show. You're on the air.
Good morning. Thank you for everything that you guys do. I am a monthly supporter of you as well. I am a union member, but I'm not Teamsters. I am with the SEIU Security Union, and I am not voting for Kamala.
What about the people that you work with? Are they being public about it, Robert? Are they being quiet about it? What are you sensing? Because the SEIU tends to lead nationally more to the left, but of course, that's just, again, these national offices, I think, they represent some public and private sector. What are you hearing from those that you work with?
Of course, the union has come out and endorsed Kamala, but the members themselves, I'm hearing some aren't being boisterous about it, but some are, that they're going to vote the other way. They're going to vote for Trump.
Okay, so, there you go. I think, Will, very interesting from Robert right there, that even speaking to fellow members inside the SEIU, which tends to lean more to the left, that there's a lot of Trump support there. I mean, and we know that within unions, it is not like it used to be where it was 90% plus Democrat, votes, and I think that it's just very telling that of all places, the Teamsters try to not endorse by saying Harris would have had to get a majority and Donald Trump would have had to get a universal support.
That's right. And I think what you're seeing play out in this election is the shift away from the Democrat Party from the middle class that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are so feverishly trying to say anytime they can that they are middle class, because they're also sensing this as well. And Professor Hutchison, when you think about historically, the Democrats loved to say that they were the working man's party, the middle class party, and that the Republicans were just wealthy billionaires trying to not pay their fair share of taxes. But when you see the numbers that come out of the Teamsters polling, and I'm glad that they released their polling data to be transparent as well, even with the caveat that Harris didn't get majority or Trump didn't get universal support within their union. I think that it speaks volumes to where the swing states, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and also why Ohio is no longer a swing state. When you talk about middle America, where people are middle class and working class individuals, I think we have seen a shift away from the Democrat Party.
I think you're absolutely correct. So it's important to keep in mind that union leadership is now primarily concentrated where? In Washington, D.C. So most large labor unions, they have their headquarters in Washington, D.C. They traditionally have supported the Democratic Party, but in the past, the Democratic Party used to support the interest of working men and women. And so if you look at Pennsylvania, you will find individuals who are represented by a labor union in the fracking industry. They are leaning toward the Republicans. The same thing is true in Michigan. The auto workers who are losing jobs to the electric vehicle mandate, they are beginning to trend toward the Republicans. And the poll numbers of Teamsters workers suggest a similar phenomena is occurring within the Teamsters union. This has been a strategic move over the last 20 to 30 years, in part because unions increasingly are led by elites who've been educated at elite universities, and they don't really care what their members think. And they are not really that concerned about the everyday working class interest. People that are experiencing egg prices that have gone up 60%. Gasoline prices have doubled during the Biden-Harris regime. Those things, they are motivating workers to move away from the Democrat Party.
You know, we see on a YouTube comment, my spouse and I are both Teamsters, and we're voting for Trump. We've got more calls coming in. But, Harry, I do want to get your take on the interest rate cut. It's the largest cut. It's a half point. People have been waiting to see when the Fed would take some action. What do you think the positives are of this cut and the potential negatives?
Well, number one, the interest rate cut will likely translate into reduced mortgage costs for particularly new home buyers and first-time home buyers. But it's also important to note that cutting interest rates may also lead to a further rise in inflation. And as I suggested earlier, if you look at egg prices, if you look at food prices, if you look at gasoline prices, all of those things have ramped up under the Biden administration. And it's also important to note that unemployment is rising for native-born Americans in two ways. First, they're losing jobs, and secondarily, many of them are forced to accept part-time work. So I think it's probably a mixed message for the market. The Federal Reserve and the bankers are still forecasting an increase in unemployment from 4.2% to 4.4% perhaps by the end of the year. So it may slow the hemorrhaging of jobs in America, but it will not mean that job losses will end.
You know, that's the interesting part of this. And, Will, I mean, I think that people have wanted to see an interest rate cut. They see, again, prices high. They feel the effects of inflation. It's like even if they could sell their home and buy the next home up or even try to purchase their first home, it's not really an option because of the mortgage rates and the interest rates and the borrowing rates are too high.
Well, and I think what the Harris campaign will try to do is when the stock market reacts, says yesterday it was a good day for the market. We'll see how that pans out in the long term as the analytics get analyzed about really where the economy is if the market continues to go up. But the Harris campaign will try to capitalize on any gains in the market as, look, Bidenomics is working, when in reality, reality, what the Federal Reserve has been doing for the past 3 years is trying to combat the disastrous policies of Bidenomics. It's one of the blessings and the curses of having a Federal Reserve, a central banking system, is that sometimes they are playing against their own government. It's a quasi-independent government. It's not directed by the president, but they do appoint the Federal Reserve members. But when you look at it, it's going to be a situation here just a few weeks from an election where the Harris campaign is hoping for good economic news that they can try to claim as a victory, saying, look, our plan works. We're going to continue to fight for the middle class, as she's been saying in her very docile interviews that she's had, or panels, as we called them yesterday on the broadcast. But we will see, and the reality of them cutting this rate is the reason rates are so high to begin with is because of the inflation under the Biden-Harris economy, and that's the reality of it. So any gains will be short-lived, and they're as a result of fighting back against Bidenomics, not because of Bidenomics.
Harry, the cynics will say this is done for political purposes. This is even though it's a quasi-independent body, this is done to benefit Harris. She's the incumbent. She can say, look, interest rates are coming down. We must be doing the right thing. Is that that's just the cynical look at it. I'm sure a lot of our audience thinks, you know what, this is what was going to happen right before the election. The next time they meet, they're going to cut the interest rates. It's going to be a historic cut with 0.5 point, and this is all to play into the Democrat strategy.
I think that is at least partially correct. But I would also offer a cautionary note that lowering interest rates by a full 0.5 point often correlates with what? A subsequent recession. So one of the things to keep in mind is that this is not an unmixed blessing. Number two, let me suggest my compliments to Will Haynes, executive producer, and make him an honorary economist, because it's very likely that what has actually fueled the problems in the economy was going off the gold standard. This has allowed a tsunami of government spending, which has fueled inflation long term, and it has forced the Federal Reserve to raise interest rates. Now they are taking their foot off the pedal a little, but we still need to be wary of a possible recession and a rise in inflation going forward.